In today's video, we continue our NHL season preview series. We're now ready to jump from the Western Conference Pacific Division back to the Eastern Conference. We're now going to look at teams in the Metro Division. We're going to kick things off with the New York Islanders. We saw them have a bit of a regime change this offseason as well as some roster changes. Where will they finish this year? What are the expectations? We'll discuss all the options coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we continue our NHL season preview series. We now jump our way over to the Metro Division, and we're going to start here with the New York Islanders. I think the Islanders are a very interesting team this year. They're a little bit harder, I think, to kind of peg where they're going to finish. There's a lot of variables here that are probably at play, and we're going to discuss that. But if you're new to this series, we're going to basically recap what happened last year, take a look at how the team did, changes to the team, including the front office, the top scorers last year, the recent playoff history, where are they at with their salary cap, how did this team change from a player standpoint over the course of the offseason, is there any rookies who could impact this team, what trades are they going to be expected to make, is there any contract extensions that are going to be newsworthy? What's the projected lineup look like? And what are their top questions that they need to answer this year to really determine the outcome of their season? So let's start by recapping the 24-25 campaign here for the Islanders. So they had, like I said, a pretty mediocre season, 82 points in 82 games. So that's the definition of 500 hockey, 35 wins, 35 losses, 12 overtime losses. So, like I said, you can't get a whole lot more average than that. They were out of the playoffs last year. We saw 3 teams from the Metro make the playoffs. And, well, they weren't one of them. Of course, 5 teams from the Atlantic. The Atlantic Division seems to be a little stronger right now. And the Islanders kind of fell, trending towards the bottom of the Metropolitan Division, although they were not at the all the way down at the bottom. They definitely were better than a few teams last year. They scored 222 goals for 27th best. They allowed 257 for 20th best. So, considering where this team was at, those numbers are not overly shocking, but they really need a little bit of everything to improve this year. They didn't score enough, and they did give up too many in order to be considered a playoff team and make the playoffs. And it was the first full season as well of Patrick Waugh. He had come in partway through the season before, after they decided to move on from Lane Lambert. And Waugh, of course, we know, can be a bit of a polarizing figure. I think he's kind of mellowed a little bit here in his older years, but certainly there was a lot of rumors and speculation that Waugh and Lou Lamoriello had a good relationship in the beginning, and then they started to butt heads on what the team needed, roster decisions, utilization, all those things. And I think there's some moves that Waugh was hoping Lou would make. And, well, that's the thing with Lou, is a lot of fans kind of ran out of patience. Is like we kind of saw the same Islanders team, at least it felt that way. They're not that the lineup was exactly the same year after year, but there just wasn't enough of significant change considering the, mediocre, mushy middle results that we've seen for a while now. So, like I said, it's something that was finally coming. But at the end of the year, we did learn that GM Lou Lamoriello would not be coming back. His contract appeared to be up. Ownership decided they were going in a new direction. There was some speculation maybe he would stay on, maybe he wouldn't. But, of course, they ended up hiring an up-and-coming younger GM, comes over from Tampa, Matthew Darche. He's got to learn from some of the best in the business. Over his years in Tampa, very successful organization, consistent playoff results, a couple of Stanley Cups. So there's lots there to draw upon for sure. So Darche certainly seems like he's a good choice and off to a good start here. And of course, before Darche came in, one big trade that the Islanders did make, which kind of surprised me in a sense, was Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson was moved by the deadline, went to the Avalanche. That was the deal that Lou did. As much as I thought it needed to be done, and I do think they got a good return, this Lou and his loyalty I thought might get in the way, but thankfully it did not. Their recent playoff history, they missed last year, but they've made it 2 of the last 4 years, and they've made 5 of the last 7 years. So it'll be 7 years ago would have been the end of the John Tavares era on Long Island. And of course, like I said, a lot of us thought this team was going to crumble, and it didn't happen. They got better for a while, and the rest of the core kind of stepped up, and some of the other little moves they made paid off, or at least for a while. And for the first few years there, they had a good run of not only being better than when Tavares was there. By being a playoff team, they had a couple of deep playoff runs. But in the last 2 to 4 years, we're looking at a lot of mediocre hockey. You're in the playoffs, you're out of the playoffs, or you're out first round. Like, there just hasn't been enough turnover and enough change is kind of the general sentiment around a lot of the fan base now, which I do concur with. The top scorers last year, Bo Horvat led the team with 57 points. You got to have your top scorer have more than 57 points. You're not going to go anywhere if you don't have at least a 1 or 2 70, 80 point players. Anders Lee, captain of the team, second on the team in scoring with 54 points. Kyle Palmieri next with 48. Holmstrom with 45 and Pajot with 42. Then, of course, we saw some more changes this offseason, which we'll get into here momentarily. So that kind of recaps last year. Mediocre hockey. The last year, Lou Lamoriello trades Brock Nelson. They had to hire Matthew Darche in the offseason. And, well, here we are. So cap space going into the current season that's coming up is only $1.625 million. They don't have a lot of room, but they did spend some money on some interesting acquisitions. We also saw a big trade from this team as well, which we'll get into now in additions and subtractions. So looking at the subtractions from this team, a couple of less significant ones, Hudson Fasching and Samuel Bolduc both move on. Kind of depth fringe players that really weren't going to have a huge impact one way or the other. Noah Dobson is the big subtraction from this team. Noah Dobson, of course, kind of entering his prime years, mid-20s, looking for the big contract, get through his ELC, then they ended up doing a bridge deal, and then it was time for a new contract. Of course, it was an RFA, and after discussions with new GM Matthew Darche, there was, I don't know if the fan base all totally understands this, but this was not a case of them completely saying, okay, Dobson's got to go. That wasn't it. Darche had interest to keep Dobson, but not at a $9 million cap hit. And to be honest, I think he made the right decision. We'll see long term. Time will tell. Dobson's got a long-term deal now to play on in Montreal, which we'll have to look at and see how that plays out. But based on last year and based on some parts of his game, I can understand why Darche would be reluctant to give him that contract. So they had some discussions around where things would need to be for him to stay. It looks like he was looking for way too much than they were willing to pay, and they decided to move on. They pulled off a big trade with the Montreal Canadiens, of course, and I think they did pretty decent considering. So all in all, we'll see how Dobson makes out in Montreal. Now, looking at the new to the team this year, we got Jonathan Drouin. Comes over from the Avalanche. Of course, he played there for the last couple of years, reuniting with his old junior teammate Nate McKinnon. Did pretty well. The Avalanche would have liked to have capped him, but it just couldn't squeeze him under their cap. So that was the reason why he became available to the Islanders. Of course, longtime Montreal Canadian before that, where he kind of had some struggles, but he's definitely been the better version of himself the last few years with the Avs. Emil Heineman was one of the pieces that came over in the Dobson trade from the Canadiens. I think he could be a very useful bottom six forward. And to be honest, I think he's somebody that in a pinch you can elevate as well. I don't think he's a consistent top six guy, but if you look at how the bottom six for the Islanders are going to be laid out, which we'll see here in a minute, I think there's a possibility if somebody's hurt or not going well, that he could play a player that maybe gets elevated from time to time. Ethan Berg and Matthew Highmore, a couple of free agent signings as well. Guys that probably won't be on the NHL roster to start the year, but have enough experience that if you have to call them up, that it's you're not so concerned. Highmore especially can be a guy if you want to insert some speed. The guy's got, he can fly with the best of them. He spent the last few years with the Senators organization and mostly in Belleville, but last year he kind of split because of injuries. Split the year pretty close between Ottawa and Belleville, but he can kill penalties. He's a really good skater. Not going to give you a lot of offense. So he's one of those guys to me that can absolutely fly, but the reason he hasn't had a stronger career is lack of finish. I seen him play a lot in junior when he was at the Sea Dogs here close to me in St. John, New Brunswick, and the same thing then. Like he had better finish there, but it was still with the chances he had, he should have done even better. That was always the knock on Highmore's just that skill to finish. They also signed David Rittich, comes over as well, another goaltender in the organization, which is good. I think there's some uncertainty around Varlamov, so it's good to have another veteran around. I don't know that they had a lot of confidence in Hogberg after last year, so bringing Rittich in, I think, will be a good move. They also bring in Maxim Shabanov, comes over as a Russian unrestricted free agent, signs in North America. Smaller forward, but looks to have some skill. I would suspect, based on looking at things, they might give him a top 6 opportunity. Based on how he played in Russia, I think that's probably where he best fits, but we'll see how that works out. And of course, Matthew Schaefer, the first overall pick in the draft. The Islanders and Matthew Darche, very blessed to have that fall in their lap. Like I said, they didn't have the absolute best odds of winning, but they get that first overall pick. New GM. What better way to start your tenure? And it's the first time as a GM with the first overall selection. And I think they absolutely hit a home run with this pick. I think it was a no-brainer, to be honest. I think that there's going to be some other high-end talent at the top of the 25 draft as well. So it's not like they really could have screwed it up, I don't think. But Schaefer is going to be a very special player, and I fully expect him to be on the roster and play this year as well. So that'd be another impact. Now, any rookies besides Schaefer that can have an impact on this team this year? I do expect Schaefer to, like I said, to play. Unless something unforeseen happens, I think he's going to spend the full year with the club. I don't see why he couldn't. But if things are not going as well as we think they will, then they have the option to send him back to junior. But I just don't know that it's really beneficial for him. He's one of those guys that should be able to go to the minors, but if need be. But anyways, we'll see what happens. But I think he'll be on the roster all year. Cal Ritchie's another guy to watch this year. I think Ritchie might be a guy that has to start in the AHL, but by the end of the year would not be shocking if he's full-time in the NHL. I think he was the main piece that came over in the Brock Nelson deal. He should project to be a really good middle 6 centerman. So I think they've got themselves a good one there, and he's definitely going to get games, and I think he'll have an impact. Isaiah George's not, a full rookie per se. Played 33 games last year, but he looked good. Their decor's a little bit different this year, especially with Schaefer coming in, but he may not have a full-time spot. Hard to say. We'll see what decisions they make in training camp, but either way, he will get games this year, and I think he will be impactful. As far as trades we could see, I think a couple of players that are, the most likely one being a guy on an expiring contract is Jean-Gabriel Pageau. I don't see a scenario. We'll see, but I'd be shocked if they re-sign him. I see Ritchie as his replacement, essentially. That's why I think that Pageau's likely moved before the deadline, and at the second half of the season, you see a lot more Ritchie. So that's my expectation there. That's what I would do if I was a GM, so we'll see. Scott Mayfield's another name to watch. I know they heavily contemplated moving him last year as well. And if the Islanders do fall out of the race early, and if they're not, depending on where they're at, like if they are going to be like, a bottom 7-8 team, bottom 10 team, Darche might decide to be more aggressive with retooling the roster. I mean, you get Anders Lees in the last year of his contract. They said they're going to kind of wait and see how everything plays out. If things aren't playing out well, maybe they talk to him about moving on. So there could be some other moves too, but I think a lot of it will depend on how they're doing. As far as contract extensions we could see that would be noteworthy this year, I don't think there's going to be much during the season. Lee's one of those guys that would be eligible, like I said. If he's playing well, depending on where the team is at, if there's interest in him, they have to weigh out all the options, and maybe he comes back on a short deal. I don't know. He's been a good soldier for them, so I'm not really sure where things go, but he is one of those guys that could do that, although I don't think it's going to happen. From what I understand, Darche and Lee's camp have decided to kind of wait and see how the season goes. I would suspect, like I said, if they're low in the standings, they'll talk about a trade by the deadline, and if he's still there, then they'll wait till the offseason to decide if he's coming back or not, or what the future holds for him. Tony DeAngelo is another guy that technically could get a contract extension, but again, I'm not sure they're going to rush into that either. So we'll see where things go. Now, their projected lineup going into the season: in goal, Ilya Sorokin's your starting goaltender. I haven't really been able to get any health updates on Varlamov, so I'm not sure where everything stands with him. But they have Varlamov and Rittich on the roster, so they have options for your backup guy. But Sorokin's going to play, and he's going to play a lot. So that's an easy no-brainer on who's going to start. On the D-core, you're likely looking at your top 6 defensemen being probably a combination of Romanov and D'Angelo, I suspect. You're going to likely get the pair that's been together for a long time, Pelech and Pulock. And then I suspect you're going to see Matthew Schaefer probably with Mayfield. You guys like George and Boakvist are in the mix there too. So I don't know, how the coaching staff in Wall is going to run the D, but based on the daily face-off lineup projection right now, that's how they have it. We'll see where it goes. In the forward group, you're looking at probably Barzal with Lee and Palmieri. Horvat on your second line, probably going to get a shot to play with guys like Durant and Shabanov. I suspect your third line could be Pajot with Duclair and Holmstrom. And your fourth line is likely going to be Cizikas with Emil Heineman and Siplikov. So we'll see. Now, the top questions on this team. The big one for me is, can Matthew Barzal stay healthy? They need Barzal to be at least a 70 to 80 point player. I think he can be more than that, to be honest, but they need him to be healthy and productive if they're going to be able to move forward. So that's a big question we don't know the answer to. He's struggled with injuries. Some of it's bad luck, I'm sure, but whether or not he's healthy and productive will have a big impact on this roster for sure. Now, I also put down, can Sorokin bounce back? And you're like, well, what do you mean bounce back? I don't know that Sorokin was great last year. His numbers indicate that he was okay. He wasn't horrible. He was above league average in a lot of aspects. But I don't expect league average from Sorokin. I expect, based on what we've seen in the past, to be a top 5 to 7, 8 goaltender in the NHL. And, we're looking at a save percentage of .907 when we've seen him pull off .920 or better. That can make a huge difference in a run of a year. 2.71 goals against. We've seen him have that down lower too. So can Sorokin be the absolute best version of himself? That will make a big difference. The D-core in front of him will play a role as well. So we'll see where that goes. The big question for me too is the impact of Matthew Schaefer. Just how big is it going to be? I think it's going to be fairly substantial, but I wouldn't be shocked by the end of the year if we're looking at him as the best D-man on the team. How many minutes is he going to play? What kind of impact will he have? Long term, like I said, I think he's going to be somebody who's within a few years in the Norris Trophy conversations, at least has that potential. May not get there, in the first year or anything, but I can see by the time he's in his mid-20s that he will be, somebody who's constantly in that conversation. So we'll see, but his impact will have a big impact on the team. So we'll see where things go. And can they continue to kind of balance turning over the roster, adding some youth? So will guys like Pajot move on and Richie kind of take his spot? Will we see Anders Lee move on as captain? Will a guy like Mayfield move on? So a guy like, George or one of the younger D-men can get a more full-time role, right? That's another big factor here for me as well. So on all honesty, I think the Islanders are a little tougher to predict. My concern for them is that they end up in that mushy middle again and don't get a great draft pick. They had some pretty great luck last year getting first overall. Based on the roster, based on how everything is projected, I would not be shocked if they missed the playoffs again. I would not be shocked at all if they're a bottom 10 team in the NHL again. And to be honest, I think that might be the best thing for them. Like I said, I don't know getting into the playoffs, because if you look at the Metro Division, we know at least 3 teams are going to the playoffs, and I can't foresee them finishing ahead of New Jersey or Carolina. Okay, and then you've got a Ranger team that really underachieved last year, which are probably going to bounce back and do better. You get the Capitals, who I don't think they'll be as good as last year, but they're still going to be a good team. So if there's 4 teams in the Metro that have a shot to make playoffs, those would be your 4. And then you got teams like the Islanders that are kind of going through some changes. The Penguins are probably going to be at the bottom. You've got the Flyers are still rebuilding. Columbus is trying to get ahead. Had a decent run last year, but we're falling short. So, the Islanders are probably going to be in that bottom 4 pack. And, I can see Pittsburgh maybe being weaker, but after that, it might be the best thing for them, to be completely honest. Get another high pick to get themselves an impact defenseman, if they could get themselves a real high impact forward, because that, to me, long term, that's kind of what this team is missing. A lot of their scorers are not young anymore, right? Like Lee and Palmieri getting up there, right? Your second line wingers are not elite, anything close to it. Barzal and Horvat, not overly old, but they're also not really young either anymore. You don't have that next wave of high-end forward talent. They need more of it. So even if they were going to be a team that's like a tweener team to, like, you know, be on the cusp of either make the playoffs or just miss, I don't think that's what's best for them. And I would think Darche could be aggressive early if they stumble out of the gate and maybe move a few more veterans and start to turn this thing over a little bit more, which, like I said, long-term might just be the best thing for them. So let me know your thoughts and expectations for the New York Islanders for the upcoming 25-26 season, and we'll discuss further in the comments. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.